I haven't slept since 2023. Growing up, I had two choices in life. I could follow in my father's footsteps as a farm equipment maintenance worker. It was a decent job, with decent pay, but I always got this sense of dread whenever I walked by his workshop. It was this big windowless building in a pale green color, and I always had this feeling that if I stayed there for too long, that place would eat me alive. So I went with the other choice in my life. My mother. She was always larger than life, and she wanted me to be too. She was all about the hustle. When she and my father went separate ways, she took me and my sister across the country to Bangkok. She was the embodiment of Ot Prio Wai Kinuan, roughly translated to endure the sourness and enjoy the sweetness later. She would take any job, at any time, and claw her way upward. So my sister and I turned out the same way. We would work, study, and socialize. We were supposed to be everything at once: smart, strong, cultural, and opinionated. I studied computer science at night and worked delivery during the day. I got a pretty good eye for traffic, so I can always make it around the city without fearing for my life. That's usually easier said than done. Traffic laws around here seem more of a suggestion rather than law. I also did the odd job making websites for friends, family, and acquaintances. That would eat up most of my weekend and nights. And finally, the one job that never paid me anything: looking out for my sister. My sister, Isara, worked as a club and event promoter in the inner city. She mostly worked weekends and nights, and I'm the only one she trusts to watch her back. If someone bothered her, I'd be on call. If she needed a sudden ride home, I'd be on call. I'd get yelled at for being late, or for not responding fast enough, or for 1,000 different reasons. It was by far the worst job I'd ever had. But family is family. I'd be working so much that the only time my friends would see me was when I came around to pick up Isara. They started to call me Lurk, or Lurk, something you say when it's time to close for the night. I was the closing time guy. When I showed up, it was time to go home. Not the most fun nickname to be stuck with in your early 20s. When my mother passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2020, I'd just turned 21. I was put in a position where I had to support both myself and my sister economically. Sure, she pulled part of her weight too, but she was looking ahead. She wanted to work in cosmetology, especially in movies and TV shows. That would take money and time. So for a while there, I had a lot of sudden weight put on my shoulders. Studies, work, more work, and being there for Isara. I barely slept, and when I did, I'd wake up at the slightest sound. I was so used to sleeping lightly, waiting for my sister to call for a pickup, but I didn't have a lot of choice. I had to keep going, for everyone's sake. So I made a plan. I just had to make it until I was done with my studies. I looked for temporary solutions. I'd take caffeine pills, but they ended up giving me a stomachache. Tried this dextrosteric from a local pharmacy, but that thing almost gave me arrhythmia. I didn't want to try any heavier stuff, so I kind of gave up hope. Then I met a guy called Somyot. Somyot's a nice guy, in the wrong kind of business. About 10 years older than me, but 30 years older at heart. To this day, I'm not sure what he really does, apart from co-managing a couple of downtown clubs. I think he buys things from places he shouldn't, some kind of gray area importer. He was a part-time owner of a club where Sarah worked on the weekend. The first time I met him, he was sitting outside of the club with a cold beer, having a cigarette. He didn't look like the owner, so I sat down next to him to tie my shoes. He looked me up and down. "You gonna sit down like that?" he asked. "You got an appointment?" "I need an appointment for a chair?" "For my chair, yeah." "You the boss?" "I'm a boss, yeah." I was too tired to care, and frankly, getting my sister fired from the place would have made my life easier. So I looked right back at him. You don't look like a boss to me. I didn't know if he was going to hit me or hire me, but he ended up belly laughing and offering me a cigarette. So I guess I made the right choice. I'd spend about 1 or 2 nights a week at Somoyot's club. He'd offer me a job, but the pay was awful. I was busy with other things. I literally didn't have enough hours of the day to work for him. I think that was for the best, though. He was a great guy to hang out with, but he must have been an awful boss. Cheap bastard. Somyot had some sympathy for me, though. I was working hard to make ends meet, and he respected the hustle. He offered me a couple of side gigs. For example, picking up leftover credit cards at ATMs. There's a kind of ATM that takes a long time for the card to come back out, so a lot of tourists think it ate them. So they leave the card behind. Somyot paid a little for each card I could bring him, so I'd walk around and pick them up while waiting for Isara to finish work. Every little bit helps. We developed a good friendship. I'd show up an hour or so before Isara needed to pick up, just hang out with Somyot. We'd usually just talk about movies, cars, girls, whatever came to mind, really. I didn't have a lot of people in my life I could just talk to about nothing, and I don't think he did either. We'd usually end up having a beer and chew beetle nuts. They're these nuts that you wrap in a leaf and chew. It gives you a pick-me-up that makes your mouth burn. It sums up Somyot pretty well. Legal, but spicy. But things took a turn when I was invited to a private party of his. See, I'd been up for 27 hours straight at that point. I'd been working on a large project for my computer science class, and I'd been trying to get a couple of extra hours in at the delivery company. That, and a client needed to redo their homepage after it got hacked. It was a perfect storm of a lot of little things, all at once. It drove me to exhaustion, but I still got to Somyot's party. He had a nice place outside of town. He'd invited some people from the club, and some business associates. He had these parties about once every 6 months or so. It was a way to show appreciation and brag a little. Still, Somyot had pulled out all the stops. He'd felt sorry for me, seeing me work so hard. And he had brought a guy there from a research institute. They needed people for a data entry job, and he thought it'd be my kind of thing. Problem is, I was so tired, I looked like I was on drugs. I didn't even understand the guy was offering me a paid position. As the party died down, Somyot took me aside and sat me down for a chat. He chewed some betel nuts and he took off his sunglasses. The man didn't look me in the eyes a lot, so I knew something was up. I worry about you, he said. You're working too hard. I'm sorry, I said. It's not that I don't appreciate this, but I had so much to do. Then tell me, he continued. Tell me how I can help. You don't need to do anything, I said. I'm just glad to have a friend, you know? I could see the wheels turn in his head. His eyes welled up a little. He gave me a hug and took me out to the veranda overlooking the city. He patted me on the back. You deserve better, he said. I'll get you something better. The following weekend, I got a text from Somyot. He was excited to show me something. He usually had something to share, but this time seemed different. I was a bit anxious about seeing him, but it was a nice change of pace. So that Saturday, I was invited into the club. I went straight past the bouncer, through the dance floor, and into the back rooms. From there, I followed a corridor to a small office at the back of the building. After all I'd seen from Somyot, I expected something grander, but it was just a little office with an old laptop, a USB fan, a couple of chairs, and a shitty TV in the corner, all accentuated by a couple of early 2000s posters of women in bikinis posing with cars. Somyot was smiling ear to ear and waved me over. He opened a safe under his desk and pulled out a small box of white pill bottles. They were all sealed and unmarked, except for a small blue sunflower print on the cap. He sat me down and took a bottle out of his pocket to show me. "This is going to help you," he said. "Trust me." "I don't do drugs, boss." "I know you don't. This isn't that." He showed me his phone and a conversation he had a guy from the party, the one from the research institute. Apparently, he'd managed to get his hands on a couple of cases of an off-market stimulant. "I tried it myself," he said. "Going on 2 weeks now. It's a little miracle." "What does it do? What's the catch?" "No need to sleep anymore," he smiled. "1 pill, you're good for at least 18 hours. "No way." "You might need another hour or two to recover when you finally go to bed, but apart from that, it's perfect. Doesn't make your piss smell, doesn't fuck up your hair, nothing." "No way," I repeated. Too good to be true. Somyat sat down at his desk across from me, giving me a long look. "You won't let me get you a better job," he said. "Let me get you this, as a friend." I could tell he was being genuine. You could say a lot about Somyat, but he'd always been honest with me. I swallowed my fears and I picked up one of those pills. "I don't know," I said. "There's gotta be a catch." "Never more than 1 a day," he said, "or you'll get sick. And no more than 2 days at a time. Maybe 3, but then you'll probably get a headache. Oh, and no drugs." "What do you mean?" "There's a list of drugs it reacts with, but you don't do that stuff, so you're good." "What about caffeine?" "As long as you don't pour stuff like..." Somyat picked up a small piece of paper and looked it over, reading from a list. "Ericoline, cocaine hydrochloride, diacetyl morphine, or methamphetamine. You're good." "There goes my Friday night." "Funny," Somyat scoffed. "If you don't want it, it's fine, but..." No, I'll try one." And so I did. Taking that first pill was like breathing in after a deep dive. I felt lighter, but not high. I was just well rested, ready to take on the day. But there was also a slight chill to it, like a cold breath sweeping across my nerves. I looked at Somyat, like I was seeing him for the first time. He got up and slapped his hands together with a grin. "I knew it," he said. "I knew this would be it." "How much?" I asked. "For a bottle, how much?" "Take it," he smiled, pushing over the whole case. "Guy owed me a favor." "Really? You're just giving it away?" "I'm just glad to have a friend." That night was the first time I stuck around to party with Somyat. For real. The man was a force of nature. He downed shots like they were water. He knew all the best food vendors on the block by name, and he ping-ponged from one party to after party without breaking a sweat. I was just along for the ride. We ended up drunk on a bench watching the sunrise, not a blink of tiredness in our eyes. Our day was just getting started. No need for betel nuts to keep us going. I wouldn't need those ever again. "Next, you're getting a woman," he murmured. "Then, a job. A great job. You can fix anything, huh? That's why I'm a boss." "I don't want to owe you anything," I said. You get that, right?" "You don't owe me anything." "Kinda feels like I do." He asked me to show him my phone. I did, and he scrolled down to his number on the contact list. He tapped it, hovering his finger over the delete button. "You can delete me today and never call me again. And that's up to you." "Really?" "Really." He handed me the phone back and turned his attention to the sun. But as for long as you'd like, I'm here," he continued. "No strings." "No strings?" He shrugged and slid his final beer my way. "It's just nice to be the good guy for once." The next night, lying in my bed, I was scared. I had no idea how my body would respond. It was a make-or-break moment where I'd find out if Somyot had screwed me over, or if he'd helped me out. I had a whole case of those pills stashed away in the closet, more than enough to keep me going for months. But I took his advice. Every 2 or 3 days or so, I'd give it a rest. So when I went to sleep that night, I didn't know what to expect. I had strange dreams. I dreamt I woke up in this barren world, with a dead tree towering in the distance. There were no stars in the sky. It was desolate, but peaceful in a way. And I dreamt that there was someone there, in the dark. Someone looking for me. But I woke up before they found me. I was a bit worked up, but it was just a dream. Those fleeting images rolled out of my mind faster than it took me to make breakfast. From that moment on, I decided to give these things a go. I would rest every 3 or so days, but until then, I was constantly on the go. I could work as many hours as I wanted. I could be up all night, finishing projects left and right. I never missed a call from Asara. I could keep up with demands, and I could do it comfortable, without side effects. Sure, whenever I crashed, I'd dream about that place again. The dead tree, reaching for the moon. The desolate ruins. And somewhere out in the eternal night, something was looking for me. But it never had the time to find me. I'd always wake up long before it did. It was comfortable, efficient. I could do it all. I had time to work a little with Somyot. Not anything big, just odd jobs here and there. He was fair, but didn't pay much. But then again, I was making more money than I knew how to spend. I got a second chance at an interview with Somyot's guy at the Research Institute. And that time, I nailed it. It was just a low-level data entry job, but I could do it remotely, and it paid almost twice as much as my delivery job. I had to brush up on my English. That wasn't a big deal. Sarah and I had to learn it early on in our lives. My mother made sure of it. Sarah had saved up enough money for her cosmetology classes, so I got more time to focus on other things. I invested some time in a startup app with some guys from my class, and we made some solid progress. Overall, things looked pretty good. Weeks turned to months, and months eventually turned to an entire year. I still had plenty of pills left, and got into a healthy routine. I slept better, I ate better, and I had so much more time on my hands. It got to the point where I couldn't imagine going back to life without those pills. Still, I couldn't help but wonder what that place in between the wakeful world and my dreams was. That place in the starless night, with the dead tree in the distance. Who were the dark shapes roaming the fields of black sand? And who was out there, looking at me? I wouldn't think about it too much. I chalked it up as a weird side effect, but not much else. It didn't affect my everyday life, so why would I care? Fast forward to 2023, I was co-owner of a small company. No more data entry. We had an office and 5 employees. My nickname still stuck around, but was more or less sarcastic. I was no longer the guy who showed up at the end of it all. I was the first in line. I would plan my come-downs in a way that people never noticed. I had this reputation of working around the clock, yet people just couldn't figure it out. I didn't share my secret with anyone. I figured there would be some serious consequences if those pills got in the wrong hands. My sister got a nice job at one of the local malls. One of the really big ones, not just any old mall. It was very well paid, and she could support herself more than enough. She ended up moving in with a guy, and I got a place of my own. I could finally take the step up and get myself something nice. I still spent time with Somya. He was the only other person in the world that knew of the pills. He had stopped taking them, though. He found them too distracting when it came to keeping a schedule. He was going steady with a lady named Wanwan, and he hated seeing her go to bed on her own. It was surprisingly sweet. And more pills for me, so win-win. In February of 2023, my sister got married. It was bad timing, since I had a huge project to work on at the time. So even with all my available time, it was still not enough. So I had to do something Somya advised against. I had to keep going for 5 days straight. Just 2 days more than the ordinary 3. But still. Now, I didn't immediately notice anything, but it worked just fine. But when I finally crashed, after almost a full week without sleep, I had the most awful nightmare of my life. Not only was I back there, in that desolate space, I could feel it. The black sand creeping into my shoes, the howling of people in pain. I thought I heard gunfire too. What little vegetation lived there was twisted into a midnight blue, just like the blue sunflower on the cap of the bottle. But this time, there wasn't just something in the dark looking for me. No. It was hunting. I have this vivid memory of crawling through the sands of an old ruin, hearing something closing in. Despite the sand, it was wet, viscous. It made this disgusting sound, like a crowd of large men struggling for breath all at once. I would hear it touch its way across the ruins, looking for me. And everywhere it touched, something sizzled, like burning acid. It tried to speak. I knew it did. But it couldn't. It had too many tongues, and they all tried to speak at once. Eventually, it found me. I couldn't look. I couldn't breathe. I could feel the size of it without even looking at it as it loomed over me. I tried making myself small, but it didn't matter. It sighed, like it had enjoyed a cold glass of water on a warm summer's day. It was so pleased to find me, and as it moved closer, I heard something dripping, sizzling into the sand. There was a powerful smell of ammonia, and something akin to mothballs. It touched my arm, and it burned into my skin. It burned so bad that I woke up, and when I did, I had a burn. A coin-sized black mark with gangrenous flesh tightening the skin of the arm, stinging with every flex of my triceps. That place was for real. That thing had been real. For a full week after that, I keep feeling like I've been seconds from death. I had a doctor check out my arm, but he couldn't make any sense of it. It was an acid burn, but it behaved like a frostbite. In the end, he had a small procedure to remove the necrotized skin, but it was overall fine. I just had to keep it clean and bandaged and be prepared for a nasty scar. But that thing had been so vivid. Days later, I could still smell it. I remember this one time when I was taking a shower, when I had to turn off the water. I thought I heard something sizzling in the other room. Wrapped in a towel, I peeked through the door, hoping against hope that I was just being paranoid. That time, I was. What about the next time? I swore off the pills. I was in a good place, and I didn't need them anymore. I'd gained everything I wanted. Sure, it'd take some time to get back to a normal schedule, but I couldn't go back there. No wonder we weren't supposed to take more than 2 or 3 pills in a sequence. If I'd been there a second longer, it would have taken my whole arm. Another hour, and I'd be dead. I decided to give it all back to Somyot. By that time, he had expanded his business a bit, but he'd calmed down as a person. He was a changed man. He was engaged to Won-Won, and he was trying to turn his life around. In fact, we hadn't seen each other for some time now. He was a bit surprised when I called about meeting him in his office. I met Somyot in his downtown office late one Friday night. It was a strange feeling. There were people everywhere, but I still felt like I was alone. There was this thought crawling around in the back of my head, whispering to me that if I slowed down and really listened, I could hear that sizzling acid as it burned into asphalt. So I kept my head down and tried to get into the music, the bass, the beat of the party. It was all superficial. I couldn't help but think back on that thing. Every time I heard a cough, a sneeze, someone clearing their throat, I thought that was it. It found me. But I could feel the squelch of it in my ear, almost like a heat. But I made my way through the club and joined Somyot in his office. I put the pills on his desk and sat down from across him. "I'm done with them," I said. "They do something to you?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. I'm done." "All right, no worries," Somyot noted. "You okay?" "Not really." Despite not hanging out for a while, Somyot was his usual self. He put the pills away, sat down next to me, and handed me a beer. He'd installed a mini fridge next to his desk. The damn thing made more noise than a ceiling fan. "I'm not gonna ask about it," he said. "You look like shit." "I feel like shit." "What happened to your arm?" "Frostbite." Somyot snorted, but saw that I wasn't laughing. He opened his mouth, but closed it again. Whatever had happened to me, he knew better than to laugh. Instead, he leaned over, looking worried. "Fuck the pills," he said. "You're sticking with me now, alright?" "Alright." He made his best effort to keep me company that night. We had drinks, met some people, and sang some karaoke. I almost got into an arm wrestling competition with a drunk Dutch guy. It was nice. And for a moment, I didn't realize those awful noises. I didn't smell those smells. Later that night, I could feel myself growing tired. Usually I'd pop one of the pills, but I settled for a classic instead. Battle nuts. Somyot and I wrapped them up and bit down. It was nice to feel that familiar crunch and burn. It was a return to form, in a way. It was the way things were supposed to be. By the end of the night, we ended up on the same bench, watching the sun. But this time, he was exhausted. He was nodding off over and over as he waited for the friend to pick him up. I was strangely not tired in the slightest. "Maybe you still got some in your system," Somyot muttered. "Makes sense, right? Bigger doses take longer." "Probably," I nodded. "Or maybe it was the nuts." "Nah, they don't work like that. They're a kick, not a trip." By the time Somyot's friend came around to pick him up, he could barely keep his eyes open. He lumbered in the passenger seat and looked back at me one final time. "I'm getting rid of them," he said. "Don't worry. It's done. You'll be fine." But I wasn't feeling fine. Or rather, I was. And that was the problem. I went home and I still couldn't sleep. I went an entire day and I still couldn't sleep. I hadn't taken any pills for some time, but I was still up and about. I was getting worried. But I didn't know where to turn. Had I taken a pill by accident? I reached out to Somiet's contact at the Research Institute, but we couldn't talk about it over email since it was monitored, and this was hardly legal. So I decided to meet downtown later in the week. For the next few days, I was a wreck. I kept thinking about the place and that thing. I'd been up for so many days that I didn't want to think about what would happen when I returned. He would be waiting for me. I could feel it. Hear it. I met the man from the Research Institute in early morning. I paid for his coffee, but I didn't get any myself. He was an American in his 50s with a shaved head and a well-trimmed goatee. He hid behind a black baseball cap and wasn't much for small talk. I decided to get right to it. I explained the problem, and after a larger than usual dose, I couldn't sleep anymore. He didn't look that surprised. "That only happens when you take stimulants," he said. "Didn't he warn you?" "I haven't taken anything," I said. "I don't do drugs." "You sure?" he asked. "Nothing?" "Does alcohol count?" I asked. "Betel nuts? Caffeine?" "What? No, that's..." He stopped for a second. His eyes turned away as he thought about it. He brought out his phone and checked something, then nodded. "Betel nuts," he repeated. "That's high in aerocoline." "High in what?" "Aerocoline. That's the first thing on the list." "That's the first one." "Wait, what?" He adjusted his glasses and read the list out loud. He was right. Aerocoline was the first thing on the list. Right there next to hard narcotics. "What does it mean?" I asked. "What's gonna happen?" He leaned back in his chair, sipped his coffee, and adjusted his glasses. "We made this in our lab back in Vietnam. When the lab got shut down, it was scheduled to be burned, but we never got around to it." "So, you make drugs, is that it?" "It's not a drug," he explained. "It isolates a particular chemical element. It was originally made to nurture a type of deep-sea fish to gestate a kind of rough metal powder." "What? Fish? I don't..." "Look, it's not a stimulant, it's not a drug. It puts a part of you in another place. And while it's there, your body becomes disconnected from a few of your basic needs. In most cases, sleep." "So, what does it mean?" "It's gonna happen to me." He leaned forward, looking over the edge of his silver-rimmed glasses. "Aerocoline amplifies the effect by a magnitude of about 100. It's one of those reasons they had to shut down the development. At that magnitude, there's no telling what's going to happen." "Wait, 100? So I'm going to..." "You're going to be awake for maybe a year, maybe 4, and then something I can't even imagine is going to happen to you." There was nothing else to say. He had no advice to give. There were no solutions. The damage was done. I almost burst into tears right then and there. My hands were shaking. I'd be awake for years. And then, something he couldn't even imagine. If the effects of 2 pills too many caught a burn on my arm, what the hell was going to happen after 100? 200! The bandage itched. I could hear the sizzling from a nearby kitchen. But it wasn't from the kitchen. It was that thing. And it was waiting for me. It was just a matter of time. I tried everything. There was nothing to be done. There was nothing wrong with me on paper. I was healthier than ever, in fact. The lab in Vietnam that the man spoke of had been shut down, and all traces of it was dismantled. I had a vague lead to an investor in the US, but it didn't lead me anywhere. I got to sell my share in the company. It stung, but the payout was more than generous. It'd keep me afloat for a couple of months, maybe a year, while I try to work something out. But it was a desperate search for nothing. Even the man from the research institute would drop off the grid. And when strange men in suits started asking my friends and family about me, I knew I had taken a step too far. This was in February 2023. Every day from that point forward had been a nightmare. In May that same year, I lost the need to eat. It's like my body entered a state of metastasis. I could sit in a room for days on end, staring at a wall, and nothing would change. I'd feel nothing. I'd experience nothing. And I couldn't care. With no food, I'd need no bathroom breaks. Sometime in July, I lost the need to breathe. I'd forget to do it for days on end, and my lungs would deflate to the point where it hurt to use them. After a couple of weeks, I couldn't talk without bleeding anymore. In late October that year, I stopped blinking. I would forget to do it for long periods of time, and dust would settle in my eyes. It didn't hurt, but it was uncomfortable to wash them, so I just ended up keeping them closed. Something happened to my skin. I think it stopped needing sunlight. Over a couple of days, I grew so pale I could almost see through me. My fingernails would fall off, without using my mouth and jaw. My teeth fell out of my skull. I barely noticed. I had to move in with my sister to care for me. She couldn't understand what was happening, and neither could anyone else. She'd forced me to go to the doctors, and I couldn't make any sense of it. Whenever they mentioned specialists, some anonymous group would throw enough money at them to look the other way. But all of that was just cake topping. It was all just physical things. It didn't compare to my thoughts and feelings. I would feel closer and closer to that dark place. That space beyond, where that thing waited for me. It hungered for me. All the needs and wants I'd lost, it had gained. It was hungry, tired, sunburned, and in constant pain. And it wanted to give it all back to me, to consume me with it. If I just listened hard enough, I could hear it panting, like an eager dog waiting for master to put food in his bowl, ready to tear into me, unshamed. Sometimes I forget what world I'm in. I'll get up and wander around, feeling the walls, imagining them as crumbling ruins. My sister once caught me wandering into the streets. If my lungs had worked, she could have heard me begging that thing to leave me. Instead, I got hit by a car, and I didn't feel a thing. Laying crumpled into a pile by the side of the road, the things people say feel like a distant dream. I have no need for serotonin, so joy is something of the past. Sometimes I can hear the music and cheering across the city, but it feels like they're mocking me. But the fear, that's still there. It may be the only emotion that remains. Now, it's 2025. I think I attended Somyat's wedding. I can't be for sure. I think I was there. I didn't see or hear. I can't feel anything when I move my arms anymore. There was a nice smell. I think he offered me some cake. I tried to smile at him. I don't know if I did. I've written this with great effort over several weeks. My sister has helped. She washes my eyes. I would look at the letters for her to type. If I stretch a little, I can get enough air in my lungs to make a noise, or a short word. Sometimes at night, my sister is not there. I think I can hear something outside. Not just in my mind, but on the street. I think they are watching me. I think they're curious about what happens when I got to sleep. Or maybe they're scared. It's funny in a way. They called me Lick. Closing time. It's fitting. I can't help but think I should have stayed with my father, maintaining farm equipment. I wish I could dream of seeing those pale green walls again. I had to finish this in a hurry. I think the effect is wearing off like the men said it would. Yesterday, I yawned. Today, I'm tired. Good night, Bangkok.